Hey guys, and welcome to my review of the Ender 3D printer. The Ender 3D printer is a partially pre-assembled 3D printer kit manufactured by Hictop, a subdivision of HIC Technologies. It appears to be a rebrand of the Creality/C-Reality, however you care to pronounce it, Ender 2 3D printer, but according to a Hictop representative I talked to, Hictop collaborates with Creality and has permission to use the design. At the time of this video, it retails for about $200 on various sites, and for the sake of full disclosure, Hictop did agree to send me this unit in exchange for my unbiased review. I will keep the printer after this review, but my opinions expressed in this video are mine alone and represent a combination of flaws and advantages I find in the machine during my use. That said, let's get into the grisly details. I received my Ender printer through Amazon Prime, and it was delivered through the United States Postal Service. It came very securely packaged with a double box that made for a very suspenseful live stream opening. The parts were clearly labeled and organized in compartments in their foam packaging. Forgive me for not having images or footage here. The footage I did have was of low quality, and I unboxed these live. I may end up actually putting a crummy clip from the live stream here, but all in all, I really can't complain about how the printer was shipped. I've always enjoyed how Hictop actually really thoroughly labels all the parts in their kits all the way down to the individual fasteners. Assembly is actually pretty simple for this printer. The one downside I found is really the instructions. I've built multiple 3D printers and have worked with open source machinery like this for a few years now, so personally I could piece together through the instructions rather easily, but the real question is, would I recommend this kit to someone completely new to the technology? Well, the instructions aren't always clear, and even though Hictop does include a video of assembly as a supplement to the PDF build guide that does help, the overall English really needs some work. I think between these two, an amateur could probably figure it out, but there's for sure a lot of room for improvement. This is definitely something that plug-and-play printers in this price range, such as the Monoprice Select Mini or the C-Dist, have over this kit. Nonetheless, if you're pretty adept at piecing things together, have more experience with machinery than others, or maybe we're just kind of a big fan of Lego as a kid, you could probably figure this out. As an important note, all the electronics do come pre-wired, so all the builder has to do is plug in some cables. And as a side note, I really can't express how fond of this I am after having to sort through so many wiring and cable management jobs on other machines, especially kits. Next up is build and print quality. I want to start off by saying how this kit keeps surprising me. I actually bought one of Hictop's original 3DP11 Prusa style printers in the summer of 2016, and it was, to say the least, riddled with issues. Mind you, it was a base model that was sold as partially used for really cheap, but I never to this day got it fully working with good print quality. However, compared to that 3DP11, this Ender printer has so many improvements. The frame is actually very rigid. Both the Z and Y axis are both 2040 extrusion and are secured with screws tapped into them, and then reinforced with aluminum right angle brackets. The X axis is one piece of 2020, which I was kind of disappointed with when I discovered it was only secured by T-nuts. Nonetheless, it's pretty sturdy. All the axes use roller bearings and slotted aluminum channels and are moved by GT2 belts and NEMA 17 motors. Also a plus, the Z-axis does use a lead screw instead of a threaded rod, and I have enjoyed the minimal use of T-nuts as well. I tried to find a play in the roller bearings or rotate them on the extrusion to see if there's wiggle room, but I actually couldn't get them to budge. Furthermore, I was pleasantly surprised that the X and Y axes use over-center tensioning systems, so all you have to do to adjust how tight the bearings are to the aluminum is turn a hex shaft using one of the provided wrenches. Two flaws I did notice during assembly are, first, that the Y-axis belt will rub on the aluminum extrusion if you don't position the motor mount at an angle due to its tight path of travel through the extrusion. Second, the Z end stop sometimes gets stuck on the left-hand blue 2020 insert, and as a result caused inconsistent first layers. I ended up getting annoyed with this and removed the insert to fix the problem, but in the future I might just cut it short and put it back in place. However, if I hadn't caught the Y belt issue, it would have rapidly worn away the belt and probably would have caused some massive lost steps. Angling the motor mount is a simple solution to this, but honestly it should be revisited in the design because it is such a simple problem to fix that there really is an excuse for not changing it. The extruder is injection molded plastic, an upgrade from the previously 3D printed ABS version Hictop included, and runs filament through a Bowden style system to the hot end, which, to my surprise, is some form of J-head that I haven't seen before, but nonetheless it came in nice anodized red with an insulated heat block and seems to work well. The stock PID settings are pretty tuned, and the heating process doesn't take a lot of jumping around to get to the target temperature as a result. No complaints there. Overall, I really like the sheet metal frame improvements. The older kits seem to use 1mm or 1.5mm thick steel sheet, while the Ender printer uses a combination of 1mm and 2 or 3mm thicknesses. With the increased strength overall, I've had this machine running at 60mm a second or 70, no problem, although I'd recommend 50 for better print quality. Another downside I found is that the heated bed maxes out at 60 degrees Celsius, so this printer will struggle with plastics like PETG and ABS without an enclosure, and even then it might not be able to handle them. The aesthetics come together nicely though, and it looks like Hictop really put an effort into a sleek black look. At times, it's even hard to tell the black acrylic from the sheet steel or aluminum. The printer as a whole is surprisingly rigid and actually pretty good looking if you ask me.
So, how does it print? Well, I actually have to say that I'm really impressed. PLA, especially Hictop stuff, printed beautifully. After some slight tweaking, the biggest issue is stringing and some rough corners. Expect more footage of the machine printing at the end of the video. The stock extruder fan casing really didn't allow for enough airflow for part cooling, so I printed a model I found on Thingiverse that definitely helped. I'll link that in the description.
The rough corners could be fixed by tweaking the firmware, as acceleration is set to 500mm a second squared and jerk is up to a whopping 20 from the factory. This actually brings me to the next issue I found, which is that there's no publicly available copies of the specific printer's firmware. Both Hictop and Creality told me that firmware is kept secret to prevent cloning and to protect trade secrets, which is really funny to me because it's just a copy of Marlin running on a board with an Arduino clone processor. Unfortunately, this means if you want to edit the firmware, you're going to have to get a fresh copy of Marlin and clone yourself. I really hope Creality decides to release this firmware because it really doesn't make sense to keep it private when it's open source, and really all someone has to do is read its settings off an LCD menu, then publish that. Not to mention, Marlin's an open source firmware and it seems wrong to act like it's proprietary. Nonetheless, the print quality on this machine is very good for the price, especially after some slight tuning and modification.
So, final thoughts. I would definitely recommend this kit. There are in fact some flaws, and the firmware not being publicly available really does bug me. I also wish Hictop or Creality would make the changes to the design to get rid of some small mechanical problems, because there's really no reason not to. But it functions pretty well nonetheless. Furthermore, the manual needs a serious overhaul with some major corrections to the English, and this includes to the subtitles in the assembly video. All those aside, however, the print quality and speed, not to mention, are comparable, if not superior to even pre-built kits at this price point. All in all, despite some flaws that I think need to be revised, the Ender 3D printer definitely punches way above its weight class in rigidity, ease of assembly, and print quality, especially after one modifies it. Not to mention, its lightweight makes it extremely portable, and I've really enjoyed being able to take it to work and to friends' houses. For the price of this machine, especially when you take into consideration the print and build quality, I'd say it's definitely worth it. It seems like Hictop has aimed for the sub 300 price point and hit pretty hard. I'm continually impressed with the quality this thing pumps out, and really anywhere below 0.15mm layers, the layer lines disappear. I've even pushed it all the way down to 0.04mm, 400ths of a millimeter, and the Ender handles it like a champ, so that's really all I have to say about that. That's it for this review, everybody. I hope to be doing some more videos in the near future in the area of tutorials and instruction videos, but I'm also looking at some filament and modding ideas as well, especially around this printer. Let me know if there's anything specific you'd like to see, but in the meantime, I'll just leave you with some footage of the printer printing. See you in the next one.